Hello, everyone. Welcome to Photographer Profile. My name is Nathan Rupert, and I've been a San Diego photographer for over 18 years. I started this channel to give the photographers I've met a worldwide platform to share their work and stories, especially with social media more focused on video in the world today. Please subscribe to the channel if you'd like to be notified right away when new episodes are uploaded, or if you just enjoy the content. My guest today is Philip. Hey, Philip, how are you doing?
I'm doing quite well. Thanks for asking.
Yeah, just give us an introduction about yourself and your photography here for the audience.
Okay, my name is Philip Bonds. I'm a professional photographer. I specialize mostly in doing underwater photography or photography related to the ocean. I started learning to do photography when I was in eighth grade, and then really got heavy into doing some stuff when I got a job working for a newspaper, Western Nebraska, during my high school years. That would have been the 1970s. So worked in Colorado, working education jobs, teaching and school administration for over 30 years. And then about 15 years ago, my wife and I made a jump to southern Arizona to get her to a place where she could play golf every day if she wanted to, and
Sounds
get me
nice.
in a location where I could actually realize a dream that I started with in fourth grade of wanting to become an underwater photographer. And in southern Arizona, which puts us about 2.5 hours north of the Sea of Cortez. And last trip to San Diego I made, we left the house here, got on Interstate 8, and we were standing on Pacific Beach 5.5 hours later. So we're actually pretty close to the ocean, and we've got access to two international airports, one in Phoenix and one in Tucson. I've been doing this for quite a while, and the specialization in underwater stuff, again, was kind of the culmination of a dream that started in fourth grade.
I met you at the Liberty Station show or art walk here in San Diego.
Yeah, our second year doing that particular festival. A lot of these festivals, particularly in California, are competitive to get into. It took a couple of years before we were able to actually accept my application to get into that particular festival. So for several years now, I've done the mission fed show that
Yeah.
they do in Little Italy there. Hard to say Little Italy because I never make it come out right, but done that for, we've done that one. We've done Liberty Station's Art Walk. And then this year we'll also be over in, where is it? Carlsbad. They're doing an Art Walk
Okay.
event there in September. So we'll be over there at that one as well. Wildlife photography stuff dates clear back to my time in Nebraska and in Colorado. I was a high school principal for a number of years there. I used to decorate my office with wildlife photographs, and lived in these little redneck mountain communities where everybody was a hunter, and they liked wildlife because they liked to shoot it. Anyway, I'd have parents come in who'd be mad at me for having to do some type of disciplinary action on their kid, and parents would usually come in, and as they're sitting there discussing the issue with me, Dad would be looking around my office and invariably come up, "Hey, where'd you get that picture of that elk or that bighorn sheep or that big buck that's standing in that field?" And I do wildlife photography. "You shot that?"
Yeah.
"Yeah." "Well, do you ever sell those?" And it's like, "Well, yeah, I do." The checkbook would invariably come out of Mom's purse, and they'd write me a check and walk home with a photograph. And of course, when we moved to Arizona, and that was a fun thing too, like we retired after doing 30 years of school in Arizona, and we got here, and my wife and I were both a little young to retire, and frankly, I got bored within the first month, and so I went back to work. I ended up with a job on the Gila River Indian Reservation, just north of where we live here, and I was doing trips down into Mexico, doing underwater photographs. I had pictures of sea lions and whales and stuff like that hanging in my office, and I ended up kind of having the same situation there. I'd have people come in and say, "Wow, parents come in, would you sell me that picture of that shark or that whale?" And it's like, "Well, yeah, if you want it." So anyway,
Start putting price points on the pictures in your office. I don't know.
yeah, it was kind of a cool thing to do because it was like the photography actually worked to kind of calm people down. And in some instances, I think they were more interested in seeing the photography than they were worrying about the problem the kid was having in school. But we were able to have some good conversations related to that. I did a lot of photography when I was when I was a high school principal. I'd signed on to take on a high school in the high mountains there in Colorado, and kind of had the same thing happen with with people wanting to buy photos, but it was one of the lowest performing high schools in Colorado. And so
Okay.
we were trying to come up with ways to change the climate, change the way the kids, parents, community members viewed the school. And I came up with the idea to use photography to change the climate and the culture there. And so what we did was we put up a big LCD TV screen in our East Commons, which was the cafeteria area, joined the gym. And then we did the same thing on the west end of the building down by the office. And I worked with the tech guys. We ran a never ending PowerPoint show. What I did was I photographed kids doing good stuff in school. We photographed high school sporting events, literally thousands and thousands of photos. And these things would run continuously all day.
That sounds really cool.
So what was really interesting about that was one day I had a group of students come to me. They were on sports teams. I think it was basketball season. They said, Mr. Bonds, could we ask a favor? And I said, well, what's the favor? Well, could you turn off the slideshow that you're running that shows us doing everything right during the game? And I said, well, why would I do that? Why do you want me to do that? And they said, well, the problem is our parents are showing up for the game and they're not coming in the gym to watch us play. They're sitting in the commons area watching the slideshow.
Oh my
God. Willing to turn it off. So seriously, haven't you noticed they're sitting out there? The concession stand's getting a lot of business because they're eating hot dogs and nachos and stuff like that. But they're watching, this slideshow that you got on there. And
that is really the power of photography right there.
Yeah, they'd like to have us come in, and we'd like to have them come in and actually watch the game, watch us play. I said, well, I'll make you a deal. I said, I won't turn it off. What I can do, as I said, I'll make the rounds, and I'll make sure if I see parents out there sitting totally engrossed in the slideshow, we'll work with them. I'll just basically say, hey, guys, your kids would really appreciate it if you get in the gym and watch them play. And so that's what we did. I left there after working there 7 years, and I can't even tell you how many that slideshow, it would just run for hours and hours and then repeat. When I was leaving, I had a teacher come in and he said, just out of curiosity, is somebody going to take over this slideshow thing that you've been doing for 4 or 5 years? And I said, I've thought about that. I only got one other person who was really good at photography on my staff, and that just happens to be you. I think you're the guy who needs to take it over. And this guy, he did it. And that continued until he retired. And I don't know what the status of things is there now, but he did it for several years before he retired. And they kept it going. And interesting enough, when we did that stuff, when we started changing all of those, the school culture stuff and how the community viewed the school, and our test scores just shot up astronomically. When I exited there, we were the 12th highest performing school in Colorado, which was pretty good coming from the bottom on a period of, it wasn't immediate, but our first.
They need to do a research paper on this. This should be a model for schools all around the nation. Someone needs to type this up or something.
Well, it was a lot of fun to go out and photograph the kids. It was a small school, so I was the principal. I was also the athletic director. I was the guy who had to drive down to Denver every couple of months and go to Sam's Club and buy supplies for the concession stand, all that kind of stuff. And I truly enjoyed it. And still, somewhere on one of my computers here, I've got a hard drive that's full of images of those kids doing their thing. It kind of resonates with me when you hear people talk about, you can use photography to actually change things. That stuck with me. Now I try to use my photography and working with schools. I still go into schools, do presentations about the ocean and stuff like that. And I use photography to try to get people to understand some of the issues that are going on with the ocean and environmental issues. It really has kind of come full circle and just not going to high school sporting events and taking pictures of them and stuff.
Do you have any hobbies outside of photography that you enjoy?
I was a real avid bicycle rider in Colorado there till I got run over.
Wow.
Engaged in a hit and run type accident.
Jesus.
So they left me in the ditch for dead. And I think, according to my computer on the bicycle, I was out for 30 minutes before I regained consciousness and staggered out in the road and waved somebody down. I don't remember any of that. I lost a month out of my brain because of a traumatic brain injury with that. But I'm obviously an avid scuba diver. I never really got back into doing the bicycling, heavy duty stuff, even though I still have the bicycles and stuff to do it. Mountain biking here in Arizona is a whole different ball game than it was in Colorado because if you crash and burn out here, southern Arizona, everything out there is either going to bite you, stick you, or hurt you in some way. And the mountain bike really hasn't seen a lot of action since we got here. But we've got
It's
that stuff
amazing.
available. And
It's amazing we're still talking to you right now after that incident. It's amazing that you're
I've managed to live a pretty exciting life. I worked for 14 years, 14 summers for the National Park Service, which I was a resource management park ranger, but my other title was I was a park mammologist. I dealt with all of the wild live animal issues during the summer that they had in Dinosaur National Monument in
okay.
northwestern Colorado. And in addition to doing the park ranger thing, I worked federal wildfire suppression teams for 14 years there. And the National Park Service allowed me to hone my wildlife photography techniques and stuff that I used. One of the things with wildlife photography is you usually requires pretty extensive equipment in terms of lenses and
Yeah.
stuff like that. And I think I was the sole user of a big 600 millimeter Nikon lens that they kept in the
Wow.
regional office. Whenever we had a project coming up that we needed to photograph with it, they would load it. Somebody would show up from our area or close by, and they would basically load the lens in the trunk that it came in and haul it out to me, and I'd use it, and I'd finish. I'd go ahead and send it back and check it in. But I got access to a lot of really, really expensive gear. On a teacher salary at that time, I could never have afforded to buy
Yeah.
myself. So that was a good deal and got me some exposure, even though it was all National Park Service pictures. My work was displayed at the Washington, D.C. at the
Oh wow.
different displays the National Park Service would do. And that was quite a run. It was kind of like going to work on the Discovery Channel every day when I was working for those guys.
Yeah.
Things have changed a little bit because back in those days, I didn't use zoom lenses in an outdoor environment
Oh.
much at all because when you zoom some of the lens, it basically suck up dirt and stuff like that you didn't want inside of it.
Interesting.
So I used mostly fixed focal length stuff. My favorite go-to lens for a lot of the work that I do is a 200 to 600 millimeter Nikkor, which is a fabulous lens. It was used to take that dolphin picture that's behind me there, that big
Yeah, we'll look at
leap.
we have that picture. We'll look at it here
So
in a little bit.
anyway, so
How do
yeah,
you
thanks,
feel about AI in photography? Have you thought about that?
we've used AI kind of ever since we kind of moved away from film and got into doing digital stuff. I'm sure that there are a lot of people out there who still remember what film looks like. You know,
Some viewers probably.
yeah. Typically, if you're using post processing stuff like Lightroom or Photoshop, or my favorite that I like to use is Aperture, the old now defunct system that Apple came up with, which was basically very, very similar to Lightroom and Photoshop. Or if you're using software like Nikon NX, which I started using back when we made the shift to digital stuff, there's elements of AI within that software. I know when I coach people, I work with several underwater photographer wannabes have their own camera systems and do their work and stuff. When I'm working with those folks, I always tell them, you need to be working with your camera so that you don't have to go in and do a lot of post processing stuff. Minimal. Keep it
Yeah.
really, really
That takes a
minimal.
lot of time. That takes a lot of time to do that post processing.
I know there's one particular photographer, and actually he's quite good. But I was out on a trip with him a couple of years ago. We have a friend who has a boat down in San Carlos, Sonora, and went down and spent a week living on and diving off of his cruiser boat that he has down there. And he called me over one evening and he says, "Hey, I want to show you what my post processing stuff is that I'm doing with these photographs I took." And I watched him, and when he was all done, he said, "What do you think?" And I said, "I think you're doing way too much post processing stuff. But you need to leave your sharpening tools until you really need them. Don't be screwing with." And he didn't. He said, "Well, I like it." And I said, "Well, it's your photograph. It's what you want to do. Keep doing it. But I'm telling you, do not. You need to keep this stuff to a minimum." I've only entered one photo contest, and unfortunately, that one photo contest I won. I look at some of these guys and I'm going, you want to enter photo contests and stuff like that. That's cool, but keep in mind the rules for a lot of those contests say very, very minimal post-processing stuff.
Right.
They don't want to see an overly processed image. And a lot of these judges have been doing it long enough, they can just look at it and they can tell if you're doing too much on it.
I was say that happens to a lot of photographers when they
But
first learn HDR like landscape. They go overboard on the sliders and stuff like that. It does take some practice to not go overboard on certain types of post processing.
But you've got to know how to use your camera. You've got to know how to use your lighting equipment. You need to make sure that you can put the light where you want it or where you need it. You can adjust all that stuff with your post processing stuff. And I'll give you an example. I've been getting stuff on Facebook. I get these ad things on Facebook where the ad pops up and it's like, hey, we've got this new system. It's called such and such, and look what it can do. And show the guy at the computer's, manipulating his brush tool and just doing these brush over things, and the photo just lights up magically and all this kind of stuff. I don't know. I'm too old. I'm old school. I still shoot film from time to time. I find shooting film actually helps me when I'm thinking about composing a shot and everything together the way it needs to be. With film, you have a choice. You either have 24 exposures or 36 exposures, unless you're loading your own film cassettes with, and that limits what you can do. And it's not like you're underwater and you run out of film and you could pop your housing open and pop another roll in and keep shooting. Right. So I'll take one of my film underwater cameras, or I'll shoot just to practice my composition, what I'm trying to get underwater. What I see a lot of people doing, they point and spray. Well, it's a lot easier to just learn to use your camera so you can make the first one or two shots count for you.
What do you want to happen to your photos when you die, when you're no longer here? Anything special? Have you thought about that?
Oh, not really. I hope that people continue to enjoy them. I've got one photo that I took was back when I was working on my sea lion book. It's the cover shot for the sea lion book, and that photo sold at a single artist exhibit that I did here at an art museum in Casa Grande, Arizona. A fun event. They recruited me to come in and show people the work I was doing in the ocean. I had people lined up out the door. They kept having to go to the liquor store and buy more wine because they kept running out of wine. I had one photo. It was a fairly large photo of a sea lion, same sea lion image that appears on the cover of my book and in a chapter in the book. And I had a gal come up to me, an elderly lady came up and said, Phil, I want to buy that picture. I said, well, I'm glad you want to buy it, but you have to talk to the museum people about that because sales have to go through them. I mean, for crying out loud, they were getting 40% of whatever I sold. And she said, well, I'm going to go talk to them. She said, I'm going to take it with me tonight. And I said, well, they don't. The way these exhibits work, you're not allowed to take it with you tonight. You've got to leave it up for the entire month while I'm displayed here. She said, no, I'm taking it with me tonight. And she took it.
Wow.
She's
determined.
She was over there arguing with the museum board. And handed them a check. And she walked right over to the wall where that picture was hanging, grabbed that sucker off the wall, and marched out the door with it. I ran into her about a year later and said, how'd that sea lion picture work out for you? She said, well, I can't decide where to hang it in my house, but I love it. I absolutely love this picture. It's beautiful. She's, I keep it in a closet. I pull it out several times a day, just lean it against the bedroom wall and just look at it because I'm so mesmerized by this photo. And I said,
wow.
Well, I'm really happy that you feel it. I hope you figure out where you're going to hang it. I found out that she hung it in a place where she could see it frequently during the day because she hung it in her bathroom. The years passed, and I was talking to another member of the artist community here in Casa Grande, and they said, hey, do you know that this gal died? She died a couple of years ago. And her kids went over to clean out her house to get the house ready to sell. This lady had an incredibly huge art collection. And we're talking expensive stuff that she had collected over the years. And the kids decided they would sell off that collection. They auctioned off all of her artwork, and they donated the proceeds from that auction to the local art museum here to keep the local art museum doing its thing because the art museum was a real favorite thing of hers. They sold all of her artwork except one piece. Her kids, her son and her daughter, now share custody of that sea lion photo that she bought.
Wow.
Seriously, they share custody of it.
That's
it
amazing.
Stays at the son's house for 6 months. When his 6 months is up, her daughter goes over, takes it down off the wall, takes it to her house, and hangs there for 6 months. And then when her 6 months is over, the son goes and gets it. And what they've told people is that this was our mom's favorite piece of art. It reminds us of her because it was her favorite. And We will never let go of this piece. When we pass, our kids are going to share custody of this because it will
Wow.
remind them of their grandmother. And I'm thinking, wow, that's actually a pretty cool, what a nice legacy to leave people. If I've managed to create some artwork that they really enjoy.
That is the power of photography right there. That's incredible. And if you could take the portrait of any celebrity, alive or dead, do you have anyone in mind that you would love to shoot?
Well, I do much better with animal pictures than I do with people pictures. Growing up in western Nebraska in a county with no water,
Yeah.
no lakes or real rivers or anything like that, came to appreciate Jacques Cousteau quite a bit. But there are some others that trying to advocate for preservation of the ocean. Dr. Sylvia Earle comes to mind. I've got some friends in Mexico that run marine mammal rescue centers that are doing amazing work down there, and wouldn't mind photographing those guys at some point doing their thing. So
I like that answer. So we did talk a little about all these pictures we're about to see. Let me go ahead and share my screen here. Okay. This is the first one that you sent me. Go ahead and tell us about this image here.
well, that's the back of a humpback whale. I wasn't standing on top of the whale, but I was pretty close. I was within just a few feet of that humpback when it surfaced. That picture was captured in the northern Gulf of California, just south of the dividing line where the vaquita reserve there is, where they're trying to keep fishermen out so the vaquita that are left won't get killed by being entangled in nets and stuff. But we were out on basically a whale watching boat. That whale was coming directly at the front of the boat, the bow area. My wife was with me on that trip, and we saw it coming. I told her, I said, follow me. We're going to run back to the stern. Well, she said, what are you going to do? And I said, well, I'm going to jump over the stern rail on the boat. I think that humpback that's coming directly at the boat is going to come under the boat. I bet it's going to surface right here behind the boat. I need to have you lean over the stern rail, grab my belt with both hands, and hold on to me just so I don't fall off. And all of a sudden, right in front of me, this whale comes up out of the water. Comes up, I was standing on top of it, and we had beautiful lighting conditions. It was late afternoon, so what you see in the top of the picture, that's not sky, that's actually the surface of the water. We had these beautiful lines of color on the surface of the water. That humpback appeared right in front of me, and the thought hit me, oh my God, I hope that it doesn't raise its tail. Normally, when you see a humpback come up, they'll do several shallow dives where just the back will come out of the water. But their last dive, when they're getting ready to dive deep, their tail comes up out of the water. Thought hit me, oh my God, I hope it doesn't raise its tail, because if it raises its tail, it's going to hit the swim step and knock the step and me in the water. I could actually see the tail come up right below my feet. Rather than raising it, the whale had really good sense of where the boat was. It slid its tail right across the surface of the water.
Oh, wow.
Before it
Interesting.
dove. I actually clicked an image of the tail, but the tail was so big it cut the tips of the tail off. So I've never marketed that photo. That photo
Right.
is one of the coolest ones I think that I've been able to capture in terms of saleability. I've probably sold more of that picture than anything else. And
Okay. Let me share the next one. Go ahead and tell us about this energetic piece.
Backlit
Here.
dolphin. We had been diving at an island just off the coast of San Carlos, Sonora. As the dive boat was coming back in, we had encountered a huge, what I call a mega pod of dolphins. The dolphins were originally kind of surfing just below the surface in that wake wave. And
Yeah.
I couldn't get any good, clear pictures of them. They weren't coming out of the water or anything. And I said, no, guys, I need you to help me out. Well, what do you want us to do? And I said, I need to have you start clapping, cheering, making noise, give these dolphins an audience. Several people almost said in unison, well, what's that going to do? I said, oh, just shut up and do it. Crew started hooping and hollering and clapping. And it was like the performance switch went on in those dolphins' brains. And we started getting these explosive leaps out of the water like this one. This image is the only image I've ever entered in a photo contest. It won the
Congrats.
overall prize. If you really look at the photo closely, you can see the rivulets of water sliding off of the dolphin's skin. The guy that was judging the contest that I entered that in actually made the comment. He said, this image captures the joyous feeling that I feel when I'm in the ocean diving.
Yeah.
And I thought, oh, cool. that'll work for a name. So I call this one Joy. Just,
Okay, let's take a look at the next one. Was this the cover of the book that you were talking about
oh no,
earlier?
that's a fairly recent photo. We refer to these as sea lion flybys. I think this one was probably done in 2023 at a actually the same dive site that the cover photo came from that I
Oh wow.
captured years before. But sea lions are real inquisitive, and a lot of times uh, they'll approach you and do these swim bys just to kind of check you out. And this is a good example of that. Personally, that's a photo I've never tried to market or sell, but
Really? You should
I'm
definitely try to
gonna
sell this one.
we're gonna probably in Carlsbad. I'll have that one available in a metal print. I've always liked that photo. I just haven't done anything with it. But when you asked me to send you some photos, I was going through photo files and I thought, oh, maybe I'll
Yeah.
send in this one. So
This
I'm
is a
glad you
great one.
approved.
Okay. Next is my favorite, and you have a lot of stories about this photo here that you.
That's the legend. The legend at the time I shot his picture was a 16-foot great white that shows up at Guadalupe Island in the Mexican Pacific every year. He's a big boy. Guadalupe Island, if you've never been there, that's about a 28 and a half hour boat ride uh, and in decent ocean conditions from San Diego. I always explain to people is that when you do underwater photography, you want to get as close to your subject as possible. We're doing cage diving stuff there. And what I was doing was crawling outside of the cage. I'd crawl through the bars on, there's an opening on the cage about this high. At that time, I was still skinny enough I could slide through it. And I hooked my left leg inside the cage just in case I needed to pull myself back in. And I'm taking pictures of him. All of a sudden, he turns and he comes right after me.
Wow.
I know I
Oh
look
my
just like
God.
a sea lion in my black wetsuit. Clicked this one of him when he made that initial run at me. They're very fast, and he wasn't that far away, and so I had to move pretty quick. I had my second picture that I fired was one I'd managed to get mostly back inside the cage. My arms and the camera housing were still outside the cage. I
Oh
clicked another
gosh.
one as he came at me, and I got just his nose, the nose
Wow.
real close up. He almost tagged the dome port on the camera. And then as I stepped back away, uh, I clicked another one as he broke off the attack because he missed. I've got a nice picture of the cage bars. That was done with a 10 by 24 millimeter
Wide
Nikkor
angle.
wide angle zoom. And if you know anything about zoom lenses or wide angle zooms, it's kind of like when you look in your mirror and you see the little writing at the bottom of those objects are closer than they appear. That's the
Right.
effect you get with a wide angle zoom. And so uh, that lens, I think, was maybe set at 18 or 20 millimeters when I captured that image. And notice he's dragging on the lower uh, part of his jaw there. He's got a piece of biodegradable rope or twine hanging off one of his
Yeah,
teeth.
I see that
That's
now.
the kind of
Yeah.
twine they would use out there when they were trying to get sharks to come in close to the boat. They would throw uh, chunks of tuna out and float them in the water at a 45-degree angle from the stern of the boat on each side, and then uh, as the shark would approach and try to grab some what we refer to as bar food out there, because they'd rather be eating things like elephant seals and California sea lions. People always ask me, weren't you scared to death? And I said, well, I didn't even think about it. I said, it was one of those things. The shark came after me. I clicked some pictures of it while I got back in the cage safely. I didn't even realize I got that photo until I sat down that night and downloaded the images off my memory card and the camera. Didn't have time to be scared. It's just one of those things. I clicked a picture of him. I do have other pictures of him that I shot in subsequent years where he wasn't all jazzed up and wasn't trying to eat somebody. So, close call, but pretty cool image. I haven't sold a lot of those. Haven't really tried because most of the people that see that image it scares the bejeebas out of them.
You became almost a Shark Week aficionado from this picture. Didn't you tell me a lot of news stations start coming out
Yeah,
for you?
I ended up being featured in 2017. I was featured on NBC, CBS, and CNN with this
Wow.
picture, and it was pictures on my business card and during Shark Week 2017, somebody up in the Phoenix area had my business card. Evidently passed it along to one of the reporters at one of the stations. So I ended up with a little flurry of interest, and so I got my 2 to 5 minutes of fame when these stations came in and did pieces that they could show on the news to try to lure people away from the Discovery Channel to watch Shark Week reruns.
Okay, let's look at this image. I think this is one you thought you could maybe improve on, or kind of a little bit of a miss shot.
Yeah, I call them fleeing fish butt pictures, because when you're underwater and you're on scuba is very noisy. The regulators are breathing out sounds. The sound scares a lot of critters away. This is a horn shark out at Santa Catalina Island. He obviously didn't like the way I sounded, and this horn shark decided to beat it out of there before I could get a decent picture of him. Once he was fleeing, I didn't really have time to do much adjustment with the strobe lights that I use, and there's a lot of backscatter in that photo. Backscatter is all the suspended little particles of junk that are in the water that you really don't want to photograph those when you're trying to photograph underwater. You adjust where the beams of your strobes are going to avoid having the beams light that backscatter stuff up. So that's a couple of issues with that particular photo. And every time I take students out, or I have students who go out, do a dive trip someplace, and I start getting messages with photos attached, or I get emails with photos attached. What can I do to improve this? Or I'll just tell them, well, you've got to settle in and figure out how to make less noise underwater, which typically involves not breathing as much. And you've got to get an angle on, adjust your angle on this stuff to avoid the backscatter and actually get a decent picture of the fish from the front.
That's hard to do, for sure.
It is hard to do.
Stop breathing.
Well, you use breathing to control how much up and down you go. And so when you're doing photographic work, a lot of times the easiest way to do it is if you're down on the same level as the fish you're trying to shoot a picture of, you don't want to inhale, because that means you're going to move up out of position a little bit. So it might involve either sucking less air or just skipping breathing for a few seconds until you capture the image that you're after.
Is there a dream shot that you have not taken, you still want to take?
Yeah, we'd done a 10-day trip to the Big Island in Hawaii. And I got to know some locals, and some of them had looked at my pictures and stuff, and they really liked them. And I was approached by a local guy over there who actually worked as a dive guide for one of the big dive shops out of Kona. He approached me and he said, "Hey," "what are you doing, tomorrow evening about between 5 and 5:30. And I said, I don't really have anything planned other than we're going to go out and eat and stuff like that. And if you wouldn't mind, he said, I would like to take you out and introduce you to Louise. Louise? Who is Louise? There was a big tiger shark in the harbor trying to munch one of the mooring buoys that's out there. And he said, well, that was Louise. Louise shows up every afternoon at 5:30. He said that's when the charter fishing boats come in and clean their catches and stuff. They're just outside the harbor entrance. And he said, I know her really well. He's the one who named her. She's a 16-foot tiger. She's all scarred up and stuff. And he would love to take you out, introduce you to Louise, and take my picture with her. He said, I would love a picture of me hugging Louise. I'm either going to get some really cool pictures of a big 16-foot tiger shark named Louise, or I'm going to get a picture of Louise picking up a little snack here. And so
oh my gosh.
I haven't been able to get back over. I'd love to photograph Louise. I haven't been able to get over to the Kingdom of Tonga yet. I would really love to do some photographic work with humpback whales that winter there. It's one of the few places in the world where it's legal to actually snorkel with humpbacks. So that's a place I would love to go. And then I would love to go out and spend a week at the Bahamas, do the liveaboard boat thing, and camp out on the boat at Tiger Beach, which is probably one of the best places in the world to actually shoot pictures of tiger sharks, bull sharks, lemon sharks, that kind of thing. Yeah. I haven't been able to get over there and do that yet either. So I've got a few things on my list, places that I want to go to do some stuff, hopefully while I'm still young enough to be able to do it.
What's the best way for people to contact you, see your work? Is it through websites, social media? What's your preferred mode of contact? Usually.
So the website gives you all that information. The website is CortezBluePhotography.com. That's a good way to do it. Of course, I'm on Facebook just under my name, Philip Bonds. There's also a Cortez Balug photography website or Facebook page there as well. Those are two ways to do it. And I accept, people want to go and pick up my phone number, particularly off the website, and call me if they're interested in, photograph, or they're interested in my sea lion book. I'll, be happy to work with people if they just want to give me a call. I've had people call me up and actually say, hey, we were doing a web search and you really have a sea lion book? And it's like, yeah, I really do. How much are they? And can you send me a copy? And so I've shipped them books and stuff that way. And I've done the same thing with photographs on occasion as well.
Well, I appreciate you sharing your stories, sharing your images. It's great meeting you. Thank you for your time tonight.
Well, Nathan, I appreciate you. Thanks for me to visit with you. Bye-bye.